I am here today with Itamar Marcus, the founder and director of Palestinian Media Watch. Thank you for joining me today, sir.
Pleasure to be with you.
I know your work is very important. But for those people who don't know your organization, what does the Palestinian Media Watch do?
Palestinian Watch follows the official Palestinian Authority sources, its main parties, everything that they come through in the media. We follow their school books, we follow their social media, Facebook, Twitter. We want to know the messages that the Palestinian Authority is giving to its people. What we've learned over the years, and it's confirmed every day now, is that its messages to its own people are completely different than its messages that it's giving to the President of the United States and around the world. To those people, they're talking peace, they're talking victimhood. To their own people, they're talking destroying Israel, exterminating of Jews. Israel has the right to exist, and Jews have the right to exist. These are fundamental Palestinian Authority messages to its people that you will never hear them say in Washington. And because of that, I think there's been a tremendous mistake in policy in Washington, in European Union for years, because they don't really know what the Palestinian Authority is all about.
Well, it's a question how they cannot know. I know your organization has done a lot to spread the truth about the indoctrination that goes on even to their children. What Hamas has done in spreading these lies and hate against Israel. Can you give us a few details, a few examples? How did we get to this October 7th situation where these Palestinians hate the Jewish people and call them the occupiers?
Well, first of all, I'll just make a slight correction. The problem is not just Hamas. The problem is the Palestinian Authority. The problem are the
Amen.
ones who are supposed to be the moderates, the Fatah. In fact, I will argue that since the Palestinian Authority was the one that was controlling all of the education, printing the school books, publishing the school books, both for Judea and Samaria and for the Gaza Strip all these years, it was the Palestinian Authority that created the power of Hamas. What happens is you have a Palestinian child growing up, hearing these hate messages. He's hearing that Allah hates the Jews and that at the end of time, Muslims are going to fight the Jews and kill them. This he learns. He learns that everybody in the world hates the Jews. He hears that Israel as a state only exists because the Jews are human waste and the nations of the world wanted to get rid of their Jews. So you've got the people of the world all hating the Jews because they're so evil. You've got Allah hating the Jews. So then when kids grow up and hear these from the Palestinian Authority, they reach 16, 17, 18, 19, they say, hey, wait a second. Hamas is acting on this. The PA is not doing enough. And then they all go straight over to Hamas. Hamas was created by the so-called moderate Palestinian Authority. They taught them, they educated them, they told them what's right and what's wrong, and based on those messages, they all decided to go for Hamas. Today, Hamas is the true and only representative of the Palestinian people. If you have a moment, I'll give you some incredible polls. After,
Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
after the October 7th massacre, a month after, everybody knew the atrocities that happened there already. Palestinians were asked by a Palestinian pollster, do you support what happened on October 7th? Yes, a month later, they all knew about the rape and the beheadings. Everybody knew. They'd all seen the videos. 76% of Palestinians supported the massacre. Among them, 60% extremely supported it. Extremely supported it. And even worse, Palestinians were asked, given everything that's happened since then, does it make you feel proud to be a Palestinian? 98% of Palestinians said it made them proud. So you've got 98% who are proud, you've got 75% who support what happened, then probably the gap is because a lot of the people who are proud of what happened realized by then that Gaza had been destroyed and therefore they didn't support it. But they were still proud. They were still proud about the massacre of the Jews.
Mhm.
Now, how could this be? Well, the Palestinian Authority has been telling them for years, this is what Allah wants. Allah wants the extermination of the Jews. If you're a good believing Muslim, how could you not support the massacre of Jews, if this is what Allah wants. And that's what we're facing here in Israel. We're facing a poisoned Palestinian people with the worst hate messages you could have. The world hates them, Allah hates them, they deserve to be killed, and you end up with October 7th.
Wow. I know this has been going on for a long time, for decades. Yasser Arafat had a big play in this years ago with creating this PR campaign to convince the world that they were the occupied people from Israel and they're the abused people. When did this really all start? Was it with him? And how long has this lie been going around?
It absolutely started with Yasser Arafat. It started probably the day after he signed the Oslo Accords. He violated it. The Oslo Accords were supposed to create peace between two peoples. Instead, as soon as it was launched, he started telling his people that the goal is going to be the destruction of Israel. He told his people that the Oslo Accords were a temporary agreement. It was based on a temporary agreement that Muhammad had signed. Muhammad signed a deal with the Quraysh tribe of Mecca, 10-year peace deal, and after 2 years he was strong enough, he came in and conquered them. And Arafat, just a month or two after he signed the Accords with Israel, said, I signed this based on the principles of the Hudaybiyah agreement, temporary agreement. When we're strong enough, we're going to destroy Israel. That was his message to his people. It was repeated over and over and over again as he poisoned them with hatred. He died. Everyone said, okay, it'll be better now. Got no better. Got no better. Mahmoud Abbas, who's been the leader since Arafat died, has been just as bad. In fact, he is even worse when it comes to rewarding terrorists. Arafat instituted payments for terrorists who end up in Israeli jails. Abbas, in 2011, tripled the amount of the rewards that terrorists get. Now let me explain this to you. Terrorist goes out, sends a suicide bomber. The suicide bomber kills people. Could be 5 suicide bombers. Here, take a guy named Abdallah Barghouti. He's serving 65 life sentences. 65 life sentences because he was a bomb builder. And he sent his bombs and they blew up Hebrew University Cafe. They blew up a number of cafes, restaurants, buses. He killed 65 people. He's serving 65 life sentences. As soon as he was arrested and went to jail, the Palestinian Authority law said he starts getting a monthly salary. This mass murderer, monthly salary, he has today received $300,000 in Palestinian Authority salaries. $300,000. Yes. Now, multiply that by 6,000 other Palestinian prisoners who are also getting this vast amount of money. Multiply that by about 8,000 or 9,000 released prisoners, because Palestinian law says if you were in jail for more than 5 years, you get your last salary forever. So you're talking about essentially $300 million a year that the Palestinian Authority pays to reward terrorists. And guess what? For many, many years, this was funded directly by the United States and the Europeans.
Wow.
Until we pointed it out to them, so then they started playing games. They said, well, we'll fund something else. The Palestinian Authority will pay this. But everyone knows that's willful blindness. If you're funding the teachers and you're funding the hospitals so that they can pay salaries to terrorists, then you're complicit in this crime of rewarding.
So obviously, with what happened on October 7th, we saw this rise globally of anti-Semitism yet again rearing its ugly head. And obviously, this comes from a complete lack of education as well as propaganda. And your organization is working hard to combat that. What's the message right now? How do we get this message out of saying, look, this is really what's happening, and you have no business supporting this Palestinian mindset?
That's a great question, and that's something that there's really a simple answer to. Most of the people who are antagonistic toward Israel today, it's because they buy into that lie that you started off with, that you said Arafat started, that the Palestinians are poor, occupied people, that they just want, they say, West Bank, Gaza Strip, and Jerusalem. Now, all you have to do is tell them, listen, don't tell us what you think they believe, listen to what they say. Listen, they say that they teach their people that the Jews have to be exterminated. And I'm harping on this because you just have to understand. 2 weeks after the October 7th massacre, when it came time for the Friday sermons, Palestinian Authority gave out its weekly list of topics for all the preachers in the PA to discuss in all the mosques. And what they included in there was a source from a hadith, an ancient Islamic source, which talks about the end of time coming only when Muslims fight the Jews and kill them. Jews will hide behind rocks and trees, and even the rocks and trees are going to say, "There's a Jew behind me, come and kill him." It's a source that talks about the extermination of Jews. Now, the Palestinian Authority chose to have this as a content in the sermons 2 weeks after the massacre. What they were telling their people is that massacre of Jews was not a nationalistic event. That was a religious event. That's what Allah wanted of you. They were bringing redemption closer by exterminating those Jews. That's what the PA told its people. Now, you tell this to people. We think the Palestinians are fighting because they're occupied. No. They're fighting a vile, evil religious war that they've decided is a religious war because, by the way, there are Muslims who do not interpret it this way. And there are Muslims who even find sources, explicit sources in the Quran. There are that talk about the Jews returning to their land, and they're actually Zionist Muslims because the Quran talks about the Jews at the end of time returning to their land. But the Palestinian Authority does not interpret that. It doesn't look at that verse the way it is. They actually misinterpret it. We've seen them do it, and they tell their people the Jews have to be exterminated. So, if you would tell 90% of Americans who are marching for the Palestinians, and tell them that, you think you're marching for people who are victims, you're actually people who are calling for extermination of the Jewish nation. And then you show it to them, and you prove it to them, I'm assuming that the vast majority of them would say, hey, I don't want to be a part of this. I don't want to be a part of a genocidal ideology.
Well, I would hope so. Unfortunately, I mean, there's many organizations that still hate Israel, not just the Palestinians. We know Iran, Hezbollah, Syria, all these groups, terrorist groups, are teaching that same ideology. Do you all follow any of that? Is this the same misuse of the Quran that they're lying to their people with?
Yes. They're all using the Quran. I mean, I say misuse of the Quran. There are many sources in the Quran. And there are sources that demonize Jews and demonize Christians, and then there's this source that literally goes as follows. I mean, the source in the Quran I'm specifically referring to says that Allah says at the end of time, the children of Israel will return to their land in one gathering. Straightforward. What does the Palestinian Authority do, and what does Hamas do? They twist this, and they say, Allah said the Jews will turn to their land in one gathering so that you can kill them. Now, it doesn't say so you can kill them in the Quran, but we've heard a sermon on TV where he literally adds that on, and the average Muslim doesn't know Quran by heart, and he thinks, oh, God brought the Jews here to Israel so we can destroy them, and we can kill them. That's the twisting of the Quran. So this is the problem here. You've got a Palestinian Authority and the Hamas who are agreeing on this vicious, evil ideology.
I know we have friends that are in the IDF, friends in Israel, that have recently discovered tunnels connected near and around UN headquarters that were established in Gaza. The UN has been a strong supporter of the Palestinian people and has seemed to show favor against Israel. What's the connection with that? Are they just drinking the ideology?
Well, let's put it this way: there's the UN that's based in New York, there's the UN based in Geneva, and then there are the UN workers who are all through the Gaza Strip. The UN workers who are all through the Gaza Strip are all Palestinians. They're all either identified with Fatah and the PA, or they're identified with Hamas. Either way, they want the destruction of Israel. Either way, they want the destruction of Jews. So all of those UN workers have a motivation to allow Hamas to use their schools for whatever they want to use it for. So in a sense, the UN, if they were a proper organization, would be checking this out, would be firing those teachers, would be going there and doing inspections. But what they're doing is they're looking away and they're saying, well, we don't know what's going on, let it happen. And that's why the UN is playing such a horrific role today, because it isn't careful about what's going on. I would say one more thing. The whole concept of UNRWA, was a mistake from the very first day. There was a United Nations High Commission for Refugees after World War II, and it still exists, and they've helped over 50 million refugees get resettled. The Palestinian and had the Palestinians, or they weren't yet called Palestinians, they were called Arab refugees. The Arab refugees who ran away from Israel, had they been taken over by that UN body, they would have been settled in the countries where they went to, like all the other refugees were, and that was the end of the problem. Instead, the UN, in a viciously anti-Israel way, decided to create UNRWA, a separate category of the United Nations for refugees. And they did something else, which was actually criminal. They said anyone who's born in a refugee camp remains a refugee. Now, that is criminal because it's evil to those kids who are born. Instead of saying you're a free person in Syria or Lebanon or Egypt or wherever you're born, they said to them, no, you are entrapped in this refugee camp, which ended up being a prison. I mean, in Lebanon, for example, there are so many jobs, all the really prestigious jobs a resident of a refugee camp can't have. So you have now 75 years of people being born into prison because of UNRWA. And that's why UNRWA is such a problem. They're a problem because their schools and their UNRWA areas are being used by terrorists. But their fundamental problem is that they're a prison for Palestinians, and it should be disbanded. Those 750,000 Arabs who mostly ran away from Israel, small number were actually, because of the fighting, Israel expelled, but the overwhelming majority ran away on their own, and we have lots of Arab testimony from this on official Palestinian sources. And that's the great tragedy, that these people have not been allowed to be free. And that's why UNRWA should be disbanded tomorrow.
Yeah.
I hate to say it, so much of what we believe today is due to laziness, because by and large, people are not doing the required studies to find out everything that's going on. Obviously, you and your organization are working tirelessly at exposing these truths so that we have to be faced with, if you choose to be complicit with this group, you're choosing so not out of ignorance, but you're choosing so out of making the wrong choice. So for everyone who's been listening to this today and who wants to continue to follow, how can they follow your organization and continue to be updated on everything that y'all guys are doing to expose the truth of what's happening with these lies?
Okay, everybody can go to our website, which is PALWATCH, palwatch.org. Go to our website, and on our website you can then subscribe to our daily bulletins. You can find the information on our website, but smarter, subscribe, and you'll get into your inbox every day the latest. You'll get the videos. You'll get the videos of children. I think it was today or yesterday we released a video of children in Gaza. They've got this great little game where they clap hands like this, and the words of the game are our land is Palestine. Our dogs are the Jews. And the word kalabna, our dogs, rhymes with baladna, our land. So our land, our dogs are the Jews. This is the Palestinian Authority children's game. So subscribe and get all the material, and you'll be much more informed than just reading the local press in anywhere around the world.
Thank you, Itamar Marcus with Palestinian Media Watch. I believe the information you gave is invaluable today, and everyone needs to hear this. Many lives are at stake. Many lives were lost because of these lies and this indoctrination. And I appreciate your tireless efforts for speaking the truth and continuing to fight for the existence of the State of Israel.
Thank you very much for inviting me and allowing me this opportunity to speak to your listeners.